Here we are at 10 a.m. at Neerwinden. And what's been happening? Well, again, this system does not lead to really volatile combat pictures, but this flank over here, the Cav still trying to engage each other over here. A lot of stasis everywhere, but there's stasis right here. However, Thiange's brigade is starting to roll up that flank, sneaking its way back into compliance with the wing boundaries. Over here near Neerwinden itself, that's pretty static. Along this line, there were hopes of breaking through. Now, those are starting to fade. You know, I got some breaches here. I got another one going to happen here in the defensive posture, but I'm just not really pushing things forward. And this is despite the fact that the Liège brigade hasn't been able to come up and take its place on the line. There's tons of room for it in that line. And then over here near London, we've kind of been pushed back a little bit and not advanced. Still stasis on this side. The big swing of the English cavalry force being basically routed off the board. Well, that hasn't opened up anything big, and now Tilly's cav is in the way. However, Allied reserves are really depleted. I mean, you can look and you can just see the line. It's always been there's a lot more French on the board than there are Allied units, but it's beginning to look pretty sparse back there. And if you look over here, it's even more dramatic, as it was all game, where you see the number of brigades involved. In part, that's because some of the Allied brigades are rather large, I guess. I don't know. All right, that's about it for now. Probably be back up again during this period of darkness. Although, I don't know for sure, because I really do have to go shopping. And there's some weird stuff going on where, like, a buddy of mine is looking for a place to, like, kind of store his shit and use as kind of a base. I don't know, he's kind of like a wandering person who doesn't really have his own home because, you know, he likes to travel a lot and everything. But, you know, I'm trying to convince myself that I can cope with, like, two things. One, someone else being in my house and, like, you know. But more importantly than that, because I don't think he's going to be a big imposition of any kind, is, and I think I'll enjoy hanging out with him again. But the other is, honestly, can I get the place clean enough in a couple of weeks, you know, to be able to say, yeah, I can deal with giving you a place that's not, like, scary, messy, you know. And one of the things it means is clearing out my wife's room, because that's really the only room that I can offer up without disordering my own existence too much. Here it is, Monday, out of my lunch meat, which means I'm in trouble food-wise. Really should have gone shopping, was planning to. And of course the angst, along with suicidal thoughts because I lost my keys. Honestly, any little thing triggers me to where it's like, yeah, another thing went wrong, and, you know, they're probably permanently gone. Not that I can't get another set cut, but, well, it brought out a little bit. I did some dishes. But anyway, all that is like I was unable to get the sleep I needed. So the good news is that means I'm up here, and I did relatively ineffective artillery fire. The fact that it's ineffective doesn't really mean much. The only thing I got was these two hit here. Now, a viewer pointed out that thinks I may have fired over 2 units at some point or another. It's possible. Two friendly units. I mean, I'm looking at situations like this, but of course it wasn't here. Where could it have happened? It could have happened here, but I don't think I hit this hex, but if I did, that could have been problematic. But of course, if I look here, this could have fired there at range 3 if this is empty and stuff like that. And I probably did fire over this hex. I just didn't get any effects. And now to the issuing wing orders. So the French succeeded in a couple of actions. One, Albergoni's infantry over here is going to try to advance into the spot that H guy, I don't remember what his name was, was occupying. And then over here we have asphalt being replaced by Nassau, which is probably pretty good. And we go to actions and we go to charges. Let's take a quick look. The Allies have nothing in charge. It was kind of a weird situation. So Nassau was too far back to successfully hit with a charge, but they can still move way up and thus prevent the possibility of Tilly getting into charge and hitting them with a momentum bonus. For whatever that matters. Now, Tilly can actually strike back, but it's not really to their advantage. And might want to give ground instead. After I did Cadreau, who were unable to get out of their charge, I think I want to get out of charge with Rochegoyon here. Because right now, if they charge, the one unit I really want to attack with is thrown into move order, and these two would remain in charge. So let's take a quick look there. I got +1 for this. I'm not in anything. I'm going to try to dress ranks. That's the easiest that I have. So I need a 5 or less. And I get that and drop down to dress ranks, which is a lot better, but I still have to accomplish connecting things, and I can do that with a withdrawal like this, which is appealing. For those of you who are following very carefully, I can do a little better than that. This was the front unit that had damage on it, so I just withdrew the back unit, connected everything up, and the front unit recovered its casualties. I could shift this. I can't back it up. See, I might want to back it up because of Surbeck. Surbeck's in dress ranks, but could do some cool stuff with a charge. So honestly, I actually think I'm going to do this instead. Give up that space. I started my space here, though, and get a breach, which is cool, because that means that's no longer defensive. Continuing on. I know I'm going into way too much detail for what I wanted to do. I wanted to give just the broad overviews from now on, but yeah, you know, I'm still not hitting on all gears with the system. And we're at the end of the charges. Salas made another attack here. I left him in charge just because I wanted to make that attack. It wasn't too bad. Got myself in another firefight. Renault managed to get out of charge, which means that I pulled some units back, but I'm keeping the firefight in place here to keep him pinned, whatever. Neerwinden's beginning to look like it might fall, right? And honestly, the Allied across the board are looking pretty iffy. Let's see. Guards managed to whack one of the English Guard units that was here. And other than that, not a hell of a lot. Surbeck is not in charge, right? Surbeck's in dress ranks. Yeah, and I think I've done all the charges that I have allocated. There were none for the Allied side, but that means the Allied marches go, or the first Allied march happens next. It's looking pretty bleak for them. It really is. You know, big gap here in the front. This got covered. This gap here is sort of mutual, but like I said, Neerwinden's looking like it might get the right flank from the British side might end up falling apart, and then, you know, with the big gap here, who knows what the hell that's going to do. So yeah, I gotta try to cover. I ended up napping a little bit. I'm back. I'm a little punch drunk. Did a few activations, realized I screwed up and activated some dress ranks instead of passing with some of the Allied forces, so I undid that. It's a pain in the ass. It's really, you really want to do certain units. You know, you're like looking at the whole thing and you're like, well, I don't want to pass with these March guys. Let's see what happens if I can get this unit to move. And what you don't realize is this counters ahead. And even though you see that it's in dress ranks, it's just really hard for me, at least. Again, it's the internalization issue. Anyway, I'm in the long passing period that's sort of in the midst of the brigades, where, you know, the French are just, and the Allies really have to do the same thing, but they've got kind of a problem because a lot of the units that they have, they want to do things with that are in the front. But they don't want to do them right away. They want to do them after the French have to go. Further consideration, it actually doesn't matter. It's okay. For example, over here in the plains section, the Allies were able to pick both of these, which were frontline units, because, look, Surbeck is not going to get to do anything until after I'm done going. So I did the maneuvering that I wanted to do within my capability. What I really wanted to do is I want Surbeck to go into charge so that I can hit their unit. Say here, I had a unit facing here. It's moved over to there to help cover this little gap that opened up. I'm hoping Liège can hold all of this, but you know, whatever, they're already fucked as far as I'm concerned. By the way, if this is so here's the thing. I've got these breach markers which get rid of the defensive positioning, but if this is actually a breastworks as opposed to a hasty breastworks, you know, it's pretty hard to actually massively breach a fairly extensive defensive position. So it's like, the idea of it being completely negated feels kind of wrong. It feels like it should degrade one level or something, but I don't know. Again, it would be really nice if the terrain chart matched, like the terrain key just has it marked as fortification, whereas this has breastworks and hasty breastworks. Well, yeah, which is it? You know, I've already brought that up. It's like the forest is okay. There was something else that was problem. The stream and river, which didn't match. So anyway, I also ran into another issue where I had these dismounted dragoons in with the mounted ones in the same formation. So that formation just got a little smaller. Just a fuck up where I guess I didn't notice, didn't count the units, whatever. It's fine. They haven't had any effect on play. The reason that I keep fucking things up, that was a fuck up at setup time. And again, there's a lot of information on the counters. It's not absolutely clear to me, you know, that there was a duplicate there. I think that's the only time I fucked that up. But the reason I fuck up with these guys is I look at them and I see, hey, they're face up. I want to do that, right? Like, when I'm looking for the charge units, I'm looking for this charge. When I'm looking for dress ranks, I'm looking for dress ranks and clear. Same with charge. But when I'm looking for things that are not dress ranks or charge, I'm just looking for its face up. And my brain doesn't notice these guys there. Which is part of the reason I had them like this, but that was causing other issues where I wasn't able to see what was finished as easily. Are we done? I think all of the Allied units have moved. The French are willing to waive any additional units, I think. I moved this forward a little bit, which is fine. I can't move it up forward anymore because of asphalt being there. But yeah, and that means I can go to dress ranks. But although it's the French turn, they technically pass another one of their units. Let's say the Zamboni infantry. Before we go here, and then everything's flipped over at this point because they basically have to flip all their units, and we go back to the Allied dress ranks. And now it comes down to, yeah, the French have more dress ranks, so they have the capability to delay and to choose which units they're going to activate. So they can choose to activate units here. By the way, I think I screwed up by pulling these cav back. I'm not going to try to fix that. But that's a disadvantage because these guys are in charge. They're going to go first, and they're going to have a chance to hit these with the momentum bonus. Whereas if I stay, you know what? Fuck it. Let's keep the cover. Let's just undo that. Let's not make. Can't be there, can I? Yeah, I can. Can't be any further. Let's keep the cover so that they can't actually hit me from a distance. Yes, they want it to get into dress ranks, but they may not want to if they have a charge bonus. Although, honestly, the French fucked it up too. They probably no, they were too far away to hit. Yeah, okay, we're fine. But whatever. You know, it's so hard to get everything kind of right. Here, this was just a tactical mistake. I usually don't correct those kind of things, but the hell with it, I did it because it's a big deal. Especially because the French have a real bonus for hitting things with the momentum. Dalincourt switched to charge, and it didn't go terribly well. Smacked in up here, took a first fire, routed, gave a first fire, fell back, and then here got myself stuck in a firefight. But the idea here is just hey, if I can't bring a new brigade up, let's try to clear the old one out and do some damage to the Allies and keep busting through the attrition factor. Just keep pushing forward. Surbeck went into charge mode. One of the units pushed forward, hitting the Liège units. But over here, we got flung back in a couple of places against the artillery effective hex. You know, I mean, it's not like we're hitting with good odds or anything. We're hitting at -1s in general. Here was an exception. There we were actually at +1. And the last of the units is the Rebe, which again, I chose to basically pass with. Just leaving it in dress ranks. I have nothing to do. That's the last unit of the forces. So things are going to withdraw. This artillery, it's just very slow. I'm doing shit with it, trust me. So yeah, it's cleanup time. And we're going to try to get a whole hour on one video. And there's the field after all this. Not a hell of a lot happened. Not a hell of a lot happened. But that's the game, man. Not a hell of a lot happens. I think some of it is that the combat is at an abstraction level where you're not seeing, you know, a lot of individual hits and whatnot happening. And then there's all these firefights, which are just like, yeah, those units are just locked there. And neither side really wants to give up the, hey, we're just tied down, you know, or is able. Like, even if they want to, they may not be able to. The main reason for that kind of passing and whatnot, the way I did, it's not so much, I don't mind so much flipping things over as I look at them and say, hey, do I want to move this unit a couple of hexes? Do I want to do something with this? But at the end, the unflip is kind of painful, to be honest. All right, taking a little break though. Maybe a long break. A little bit of artillery hit. This one finally unlimbered. Doesn't get to fire yet. This thing, I don't, you know, I'm like, I should limber it and move it somewhere. Because this is so tied down with the firefights and whatnot all around that nothing's going to happen. But I'm kind of like, well, but if something does happen, that gun present is better than like the long march moving down. So on to wing activations for the 10-20 turn. The developer mentioned on one of my videos, the living rules contain the new rule. Well, that may be the case, but it's not the living rules that are currently, at least, up on the GMT site. Maybe they're squirreled away on BGG or Concept World or both or whatever. They haven't made it up to the website yet, and I didn't feel like hunting everywhere. Apparently what I did in this wing was correct. I'm not absolutely clear from what his response was whether or not you're forced to attack. Like, it sounded like you check brigade compliance before you check charge, and like my charge was taking me out of compliance. And that's really what the question is does the order, in the case of charges, take precedence over any compliance issues that might occur? Do you have to follow the charge? And if not, you know, if it's always yes or always no, I can get that. If it's more complicated than that, boy, we got problems, man. But anyway, I was hoping to see that rule 4.2.5. It was not present. The rule book looks exactly laid out the way it is here. You know, this page, then this page, and the missing rule is still missing. It could just be that GMT is slower in getting more recent updates in place. There's also no errata listed there, which, you know, usually it takes me longer to get around to playing a game, right? But it took a few months before I got this to the table. I mean, there's people who have covered this months ago, and yeah, so there's been plenty of time for some of the changes to have filtered up. For example, if the wrong rules were sent to the printer, it seems very, very clear to me that the right rules could have just been posted, like right away. as soon as that issue came to light, if it was simply a matter of like printing over something that they shouldn't have. But I don't know. All right, onward. I think the only order that was followed was a commitment of Tilly to the front. Funny thing about committing things to the front, there's places where you feel like it should be the case, where it feels like you should get a bonus that you're not getting. So in particular, okay, there's always a 1 for commit, it's 2 points for commit brigade, 1 for committing support to front. More brigades in the support than the front. Okay, that makes sense. I'm not in that position for the Allies. Their support is getting drained. So you could be in a position where there's 1 brigade here, 1 brigade here, and you don't get a bonus because that front is just gaping open, right? Which, that's one that feels a little weird. I get why. Hey, I got more in the rear than I have in the front. Fine. The next one's commit support to front if enemy units are closer than the rearmost front unit. That applied here because I'm 1 hex away and I'm 2 away here. But over here, it does not apply because there's this routed unit, or this, not routed, but retreated unit back here, which is a front unit. Oh, that's not this command. Okay. But this, I don't know what it would do. So yeah, I wasn't trying to commit those. So that's not a good case in point. It was the Liège unit. Yeah, the Liège unit here. I've got Surbeck right here hitting me, driving into me. I'm behind this line here. I'm 1 away here, 1 away here. I don't get that bonus, even though I'm being attacked. Why does that feel weird? Like I really wanted the bonus to be able to get up there. Anyway, on to the Chargers. And the Allies, of course, have nothing in charge. For the most part, they don't want to be charging because they're holding a defensive line, which means we will hit the Froggies, and they have quite a few. Before I get to that, it's kind of funny because I'm in kind of a frantic state where I'm trying to play a lot, and I try to, do a little introspection, figure out why. What's up? Why am I pushing a little harder right now? Well, it's because there's something I should have done today that I know I had to do in terms of the shopping that I didn't. And therefore, I feel like I have to justify my existence by playing. Whereas yesterday, I barely played at all. Did I? I don't know. I know I didn't on Saturday. I was pretty bummed out and down. But it's like I can grow, I can get sort of activated towards doing something in cases where there's something else that's in the way. Whereas if I had nothing to do, I wouldn't feel the same guilt, and I would be fine just watching videos and playing Raid and whatever, which is what I did yesterday. I had a lot of Raid to do, though. There's no question of that. Today I'm in the, well, I do have to do a little bit coming up in the evening, but then I hit this clan fight where I have to, spend all my resources starting at like 2 in the morning or something. Maybe it's midnight, I don't know. But whatever, it's like, which of course fucks me up worse for going shopping tomorrow, because in some ways I should be doing that. If I want to do the best in Raid as I can for my clan, I should be playing all day tomorrow. So Nassau hit Tilly. No bonus for momentum, whatever. There's actually a better unit in Tilly back here. But they weren't up at the front. And basically we got a standoff. All of Nassau is disordered at this point. Some of Tilly is. We had a retreat that wasn't able to be completed. It only went 1 hex, then rolled on here. The unit recovered because you can ignore retreat, rally to normal. And then, but the advance had, oh no, it didn't have an attack. Actually, this should be like this, for what it's worth. I had this result. A2DR2 without a dagger or thingamabobby, which, you know, okay, so the Nassau unit is a little bit more worn out from the attack. It was basically an even odds attack, and things didn't go terribly well for Nassau. Herbeck created an ugly situation here. The first thing was, this unit was in this hex, facing up this way, going into the Liège units. It got itself separated from the rest of the command, so it had to turn around, 2 movement points, 3 to move down, 4 to shift over. Now it's wiggling its ass in front of the enemy up here, which is, of course, not good. Now, it's in charge, which means these guys can hit it. It has good Ds. These are a better choice. Even though the first fire might be useful, I got the hit on me from the artillery, which might not be such a great thing, but I'd be hitting from the rear, which is pretty great. I don't know about that. Like, I don't know how rigid the linear formations were to the extent that they would expose themselves that much in order to regain their position. It feels wrong. It feels like the unit would stay up here and not turn in that way. There's nothing in the rules to support that, though, and I don't know what kind of rules you would have to write. You know, again, but it feels absolutely wrong that they would about face and march away from the enemy to try to dress their ranks when they're in the midst of a charge across a position, just because, you know, part of a regiment got separated from the rest of the brigade. I just don't know. But we got repulsed here, and we managed to cross here. So all kind of weird shit and chaos is going on over there. I'm willing to live with the chaotic situation. And this unit managed to retreat the unit that was in the firefight here, but there was a flanking unit that was allowed to be flanking because there was an empty flank that got left behind. And I think I'm doing that right. The top unit got to retreat. The flanking unit didn't. The firefight would go away because it broke with the unit that was actually engaged in the firefight. I'm using common sense for all of this. I don't think there's enough in the rules to support what I'm doing. But I also think it's what one would apply with the common sense. However, it definitely shows either a failure in my ability to absorb what the rules actually are saying, or I think more likely that there's just situations that arise in this system that the rules are not comprehensive enough to handle, and were they would be a fucking nightmare, okay? Like, I think you have to bring your common sense to this game. And I think that's going to be problematic. It's reminding me a lot of Campaigns of Marlborough. Yeah, same era, right? In terms of like, which is not a tactical game at all. It's an operational one, but I covered it recently. But in terms of having to try to intuit what should happen and utilize common sense and whatnot to just figure out, look, this is what would have to happen. And that's why I have problems, especially with something like this, is because I'm using common sense so much that I'm like, but I really don't know if that unit would do that. You know, I really don't believe it. And of course, if that unit didn't do that, this unit wouldn't be in this hex, it would be back in this hex. Right? Yeah. Which is, again, different, you know. And we would be close to connecting up. right? You're just waiting for the rest of your line to move forward. You certainly wouldn't be allowed to keep pushing forward beyond what you're attacking. I don't even think you'd be charging anymore. I think what you'd be is like kind of paralyzed in this position because you can't fall back. You can't simply back up like you could under dress ranks, which might actually be the appropriate response. That might be what the unit actually would do is, I don't know, you can't march backwards, but you can kind of interleave so that the front rank remains as a rear guard, the back rank moves back, about faces again. Of course, there's not enough movement to do that as a unit. Why should there be otherwise? Well, for some reason you can do it when you dress ranks. So it just feels to me like there should be other options available when you're forced into a situation like this, since dress ranks allows you to just basically back up a hex, as it were. Anyway, we'll keep going. Now we come to a problematic situation. The guards are forced to continue their charge. This unit can go into either of these two hexes. But what is the status of this hex? Because I've got Brigade there, right? Brigade is officially in the front. The guards and Surbeck are in the front. Surbeck covers to here. If the guards move into here, Brigade can't take a position in the front, but he's also not overlapped by either Surbeck or by the guards because he's sitting on the hex spine, essentially, between them. So I think it's perfectly legal for me to move both of these into here. Brigade ends up behind the lines, completely obscured in a way that, again, I don't think is proper. I think that the proper action would be for the guards to have to move this way and leave an opening for Brigade to move forward. I don't believe I'm allowed to, because this unit must charge, and I will charge it, I don't know which way. I will charge it into here, giving me the best attack on this unit. This unit must charge, but I can do this one instead. 1, 2, 3 into there. That's going to be attacks, you know, a unit into here, a unit into one of these, I don't care. This unit doesn't have to, but filling in the gap doesn't seem like a bad choice. This unit, or the units back here, don't have much they can do. I'm causing problems if I see a rout happen, but I'm leaving kind of a channel through here that I'm more willing to take the loss on. Because I don't have to fill this, but anyway, I'm not going to go back. And so the way things are is I'm locked in firefights with all of these, but these guys are going to hit forward. Brigade is screened in a way that I don't believe fits linear warfare. I think the gap would be left for him. Overlap rules try to take it, you know, to make that the situation, right? Because this guy couldn't be behind two guards units, but he's behind two different brigades. But there's the fact that this guy like turned around and marched back and everything, and the amount of confusion that's going on there, I'm willing to accept that he got cut off, essentially. This unit is probably going to be dead anyway. And those attacks by the guards, this Liège unit is very weak. It gets busted up by it, despite having first fires on the guards and whatnot. We got 3 units knocked out by hitting that line. And that's not going to be a happy unit. That needs a 4 or less to survive, which it does not get. So the whole unit's just going to dissolve. Basically, it just couldn't take a hit, and it's vaporized. And now things are beginning to look like the Allied front is collapsing, like the Allied center is just collapsing. And for what appears to be the last of the charge, Salas goes into address ranks and disengages, falling back from the town. I don't know how much value there is to that in particular, but if the Hanover unit can't get into dress ranks, I can hit weaker units once again. Like, yeah, sure, they're in town, which makes them a little bit more potent, but on another turn, I can hit those weaker units. So that was kind of my reason for disengaging. I'm not really gaining anything, although by freeing these up, they could conceivably transfer over and cover the plains front or something. However, there's not enough to cover this front. I think whoever William's subordinate is who took over after he died would be seriously considering giving up the field at this point rather than routing. Things look pretty bad. I don't know if I want to do that because I kind of want to play out more of the system. I wouldn't be making the call now. It happens at the end of the turn, of course, because there's a chance that there could be a rout. Part of me says I want to play out the system, see if this cav can stop the attack here. But there's just too many French. Like, I do not think this is a balanced scenario in particular. Which is fine by me, you know. But I'm not sure. So if it's not balanced in any sense of the word, I'm not really sure that it's a great choice for one of the first two battles that were released, right? But maybe it's not that bad, you know. I mean, the situation that I'm seeing is pretty bad, but maybe either things that I've done have caused this situation, you know, to appear worse for the Allies than perhaps it should. But I mean, historically, the Allies did withdraw. They were badly outnumbered. And yeah, sure, they have some defensive flanks, but there may not be many good choices. There weren't a lot of battles. And if you want to, like, I'm not really familiar with stuff from like 9 Years' War and whatnot. I think that's what this is from. In terms of, if you want to look at if you want to look at games, battles from the Age of Marlborough, Malplaquet is a better choice than Blenheim for balance, I would say. But maybe it's too big. And yeah, I kind of get that. In fact, part of me is saying, I wish there was a small battle in this set. Like, I wish it had come out instead, you know, I mean, ideally, right? Look, you got a map on each side, right? And you got so much effort that could be put in and whatever. But I really wish the system had been put out with one or two small battles as well as one or two bigger battles. But, I mean, I'm having my fun. I'm going to put it to the interminable march orders units, which are going to be a pain in the ass to do, but the Allies have to go first with those, which is kind of fine. The only Albergati is in march on the front, and he's cut off. Well, no, not anymore. Yeah, but he can't go here because this is a guards unit here. Yeah, I don't think he can rectify his situation. Actually, he's not in problem right now. He's not overlapped by Surbeck or by the guards, still. Somehow. Although this unit is. This unit is overlapped by that. But there's not a damn thing I can do about it. This is what those units did. And I mean, they blew a hole through the front, so can't complain too much. Lied to myself. In my own head, I said I would go down, pour a little bit more coffee, and take a break, play some raid, come back up later or whatever. But instead I had a quick thought, which was, you know, disengagement shouldn't be trivial, right? If the Allied commander wants to get out of here with his army, and this is something that I was kind of alluding to earlier, I like to play out the withdrawals. I like to see them work. Now, assuming units aren't engaged in firefights or whatever, an infantry unit can turn around 2, let's say it's got an extra hex away from the enemy here. Let's say it's this guy. 2 to turn, 3, 4, he's out here. He's outside of charge range. He can just march away, no problem. Okay. Cav definitely can do it. They've got a lot more movement and can get completely outside of charge range for that. But the things that are problems is where I'm engaged too closely. It is not trivial to disengage those forces, which means that in order to surrender, in order to withdraw from the field effectively, I think I should have to play it out. I should have to play out the attempt to get into dress ranks and pull back. I should have to play out using the cav to defending things. And I think one can do that with the system. You might have to fudge around a little bit with the frontage and whatnot and be a little bit more flexible with those rules. But I'm thinking with the actual maneuver, the actual orders system should work just fine for withdrawing units, just as it does in musket and pike. Okay, like if you want to withdraw, you can. You know, so that is actually to me an interesting concept, and I may try to do that if I remember. Groggy again after another nap. I got about 40 minutes before I have to log back onto Raid and do something. And then I got another hour. And we don't know what we're going to do in there. I got a response from the developer of the game. The living rules don't actually, like, they're not out there. they're being kept privately. But on another note, they're already almost ready to announce another P500 for this, for a second set of battles. So, you know, I mean, flawed as this is, it's also doing some stuff that I don't see in other games, and I like it, and I don't mind flawed games, as shown by my Azure Wish collection. I'm disappointed with what I see here, but, you know, in terms of like, hey, the rules didn't come out perfectly, and I think maybe they can't. But on the other hand, the system is doing stuff that traditional war games don't manage very well, and it's showing aspects of the linear combat that I really like. And I think I would actually, unlike most games from GMT at this point, like, I'm afraid of ordering something from GMT, and in part this is part of the reason why, because this slipped through with such shoddy quality in terms of, like, some counters were fucked up, the rules were fucked up, you know, but if I like a system, I'm willing to put up with that. What I'm not willing to do is put up with things like border reavers having a couple little counter errors, you know. It's like, just that is enough to piss me off. And the fact that I had to, you know, order a separate component piece. But I don't mind for this. Like, I would get the replacement counters for this. Assuming I have other games that they fucked up, which is a big if. That may not be the case. But I've got a couple that I ordered this year that have issues. So yeah, all right. Let's start flipping some march order units, I guess. Open up with a hell of a bang. Because of route pass-throughs, etc., Nassau just fell apart. Lots of good hits on it. I was able to stack things up so that I got one advantaged attack, but for the most part, it was just good die rolling on the Allied side. And it just sent that whole brigade into, well, into the bag. Gone now. Wow, nasty. Now I'm looking at the Brigade unit. I don't know if I'm gonna activate it. Remember, this is the unit that's caught behind Surbeck here, up to here. Oh, I'm sorry, guards is here. Surbeck up to here, and guards over here. There is no way that I can get this unit into conformance. Absolutely no way. Nothing I can possibly do. And nothing I can do will make it better except maybe marching around this way. That would improve its position. That would, like, if I could get into this hex with all 4 units, if I could get into this hex and this hex, I would successfully have completed my situation. So that's my only possible goal that I see. Beyond that, this hex is safe, this hex is safe, but then I couldn't be contiguous, right? Same problem that I have here. I can't be contiguous. I can't possibly reach all the conformance goals. So what does that mean? Well, it means I'm going to be stuck in a march order with it, and I must attempt to move it into compliance. There's nothing I can do that will move it into compliance, but I can move it in such a way that it's closer to compliance, conceivably. So if I move across here, now I think that cost me movement points, right? Yeah, the hex side. See, now here's the thing. I got to look at the breach, because I think it just eliminates any impact. And I was doing these as 2-point combat value. Let's see, where's the breach rules again? Breaching. The breach negates the effect indicated by the arrow. The number of breaches is limited by the number of units in the countermix. Yeah. Negates all effects, so it opens up a complete hole. Is that what I want to do? I mean, I kind of feel like I can do whatever I like because I can't possibly be in compliance, right? There's a few different options that I have. The closest option might be to just shift back, but shifting back, I can't be in this hex. I have to be in this hex. Right? This hex is safe and this hex is safe because this is guards, right? Yeah. So, yeah. So, I mean, the least effort would be to kind of stay where I am. And I think I have to. I think I actually have to. Let's take a look. Nothing else is going there. So I'm going to just flip him over and say he's blocked from doing anything. Because it seems ridiculous to me that he'd swing around this way and do this big curving march. Although I don't know. I really don't know. And the only way to avoid being disrupted by these routers coming is to form up into a column. Which obviously isn't optimal, but it's also illegal. I gotta farm it a hex back. No problem, I can do that. Because asphalt is up here in a different line. And you could kind of question, well, does that make sense? I don't know. Because again, we got a little bit of a curvature to the line, not much. Well, there's actually no front line up here, so who the hell? You know, what do you make your determination as to whether or not it's valid or not? Well, I'm going to go by the strictest that I can. So the peculiarities of maintaining brigade cohesion have forced Nassau, who wasn't able to get into address ranks that they wanted to get into, in which case they couldn't have attacked this guy in the butt anyway, but they forced him to kind of pull back into this kind of position. If I had address ranks, I could have, backed up a unit into one of these hexes, but then I couldn't attack anyway, so no big deal there. Another attempt to move a unit that was in dress ranks ahead of schedule. Yeah, it's really hard for me to catch that. It's time for the big French flip. basically everything support line and back that's not already been flipped is in movement orders and basically has nothing to do. The only place where I really have something to do is if I have to get out of the way of some routers. And I've done that where I have to. So, all the French move, that means it goes to the English for dress ranks. They have, I think, just one unit that's in dress ranks, which is this cav unit here. And I don't want to move them, but I do want to switch into movement formation if I can. And I succeed in doing so. The reason being that allows me to counterattack more easily. March to charge is also easier in case the French attack me and it ends up a situation like with that Nassau cav here, where I get a chance to dissolve one of his brigades. But now it's just time for the French to fire off their dress ranks, which could result in charges, possibly in some cases. I'll come back. And we had another extreme result, I guess. It's hard to tell. A significant one. The odds were not good for this to happen. Reynaud attacked with units that were able to reform. Not full strength, but stronger than what they were hitting, and knock out a unit that was in a firefight here from that first guards unit that got kind of stuck in a stupid place and couldn't get out of it. And then an unlucky roll on the route check, and well, they're all going. And that breaks open the line here as well. Now, because that was the support line unit that promotes the Spanish cav up to the support line, which ideally, as the Allies, I would have liked to have had these guys available as a reserve to throw in after the rout. But because I have less forces, and because these were in march and the units which attacked were still in dress ranks before they got their charge roll, I could not, well, because of the difference in orders, I could not possibly counteract that. I'm not sure, so I'm not sure the particularities of the pulsing actually make sense, right? The idea is, okay, if guys are charging me, I would have been able to intercept them with these. If they were moving, I would have been able to intercept them, but only if there were less French troops on the board overall. You can kind of do some hand-wavy stuff, but nothing believable as to why having a larger army makes you more capable of commanding the individual units in the front. I would actually think the opposite, but as long as it's not just larger by one, in which case you might be at a disadvantage, I'm not sure. But having a much, much larger force to command and to have to worry about all the dispositions of all those troops makes it easier to resolve timing issues in your favor, essentially. And then the final thing is, because these units were in dress ranks before they hit, there was no chance that I could intercept them. Like, they formed up and then hit. And it's like, I don't know, what difference it makes. Now, here's one thing. If they're already in charge, I know that they're pushing forward, right? So that might be one argument, is that I'm more prepared for the push that they made. Here I see them forming up and whatnot, and I may not be as concerned, and therefore not be as prepared. Anyway, that's really gaped open a nasty hole in the Allied line. Now, I know I was talking about trying to withdraw the Allied units, but honestly, I kind of forgot about that until I got to about here, the furthest part of the line while I was there. Although I did try to get things into dress ranks. The Hanoverians did get into dress ranks, but I pulled them up so that they were kind of protecting those first guards. I don't think that's terrible. And I don't think I necessarily want to just give way everywhere I think I'd rather try to extricate the units that are in the most trouble and then pull out of areas where I'm not doing so badly. So the ordering actually made sense that I did it the way I did, but it was unintentional, I can assure you. And I might well have tried to get these guys out a little harder than I did. I don't think I even tried to withdraw these guys, be it as it will. Yeah. And is that the end of the line? What the hell is this? This guy activated, I think. He had to have. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what happened there. And that, I'm continuing down the line on the French dress ranks. Yeah, he had to have. But I may have... The question is, did I completely forget him? I know I tried to do something with him and failed. I think he was in dress ranks, though. And so he had to have flipped. Whereas this guy was not, and I got him into it. I don't know. I need him in it to pull out, so that's fine. Like, I'm not going to be able to withdraw without that happening. And that leaves me with just the left flank of the French army to activate. I very deliberately kept these units in dress ranks to keep the Allied units pinned. This I tried to charge with. It's kind of not a good charge, but I've got so many additional forces that I figure I can throw wave tactics in there, because my plan is to try to cut through and get behind the Allied line and force them to pay a price for sticking around so long when it comes down to it. That's going to put me over to the routed unit movement. No problem with that. I don't want to do the big flip yet. I need to swap batteries, and I want to check raid, because I think it's been about my 40 minutes. I didn't want to handle trying to make the game do what it's not designed to do, which is portray the withdrawal. But it should be able to, right? Like, if the tactics and operations that are being allowed in the game in general are those that are allowed on the battlefield, I should be able to do almost everything properly for a withdrawal. The only question there is, am I going to have a little bit more leeway here in terms of, you know, projecting units backwards and stuff like that? And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with just making up shit, you know, to try to cover that. But the actual mechanisms, oops, forgot someone. The actual mechanisms for movement and engagement and everything, those should all still apply. The only real question is using cav and reserves to screen the withdrawal to safety of the other units. So I may be, you know, playing around a little bit and being a little fuzzier than I have been in terms of following the rules of the game. Otherwise, if I wasn't doing that, I would call this right now. It's the victory check phase here, and I would say, you know what, the Allies are withdrawing. But I'm curious how much of a price they would pay for withdrawing. I like to see that kind of thing. I was wrong about the time I had. I had an hour less than I thought, or an hour more than I thought I did. But I had overrun by quite a bit the amount of time that I thought I had up here. It was a good half hour beyond where I thought I was. So I had an extra half hour or so. I used about 15 minutes of it playing Raid and watching video, but came up, finished up the cleanup. We're entering a new stage of the game. One in which, again, like I said, I would have called this as over already. After just a couple hours of fighting, a lot more in real time. I mean, squad leader's worse, right? You know, and Starfleet battles terribly so. Or trying to remember what it is. Subjective time. It's like each turn is like 1/30th of a second or something like that. I don't remember.
It's like, yeah, nobody can make any fucking decisions in that game. You know, it's all got to be computer run for you know, if it were in real time. And, you know, like a flight simulator more than anything else, in that you just, you know, maybe point and shoot or whatever, but certainly not what you do in the hex encounter game, which feels all wrong. But I'm going to be attempting to withdraw, and where withdrawals are taking place, I may have to relax or modify the rules that are going to be taking place with regard to these things. Where withdrawals are not being undergone, I think I may have other opportunities. But so, among other things that may be concerns, one is, look, I may want to withdraw my infantry and commit cav at the same time. And I don't want to have to, you know, I don't want to have to make rolls to do all that, right? Because the rolls to commit them during battle are very, very restrictive. Similarly, I may not be able to respect the boundaries of the wings during the withdrawal itself. You know, they may just not go off the map in the direction I need them to. But more importantly, I may need to violate them in order to protect forces with my cav. For the attacker, I don't know if I'm going to be as loosey-goosey with the options for a pursuit. You could make an argument that cav ought to be able to kind of launch forward against a withdrawal. But on the other hand, this is linear combat. I think that withdrawing once you got out of the immediate area of the conflict, once you got out of the immediate connectivity, is relatively easy. And I've already looked at it and said, well, you know, if these guys back out and then get a maneuver before they're hit again, they go 2, 3, 4, right? And now I'm too far away to be charged and hit, and I'll just be able to keep running and running and running, right? It's only that turn where I do the about face that I'm paying any cost at all. And that's the turn where maybe I have to fiddle around and get some cav in the way or something along that line. And we'll see what I do. Anyhow, I'm not going to stay up here any longer because, yeah, I need to get back to raid. Briefly at least. And then we'll start the new turn with the artillery and whatnot. It is Wednesday. This is maybe the last pretty day in a while. And Friday, Saturday, probably Sunday don't count. And I've been choked up doing raid for basically the last couple days. Didn't get any food. I've been eating burritos for the last couple days. Which, you know, I mean, the thing with them is they eat into my stocks. I'm out of all the stuff that is easy. And I actually have very little in the way of backup stocks. No, I'm not going to starve. Again, I'm 25 minutes from the walk from a grocery store. Not the one I want to go to, but, you know, I can make a quick run down there and get food. I can get takeout even. But it won't happen. All right. So we're ready to start this turn where I'm going to be attempting the withdrawals. I can see that leaving my camera, it's like Wednesday, I think. I've lost track of time. I'm in really bad shape mentally at this point. Not like I haven't been for the past couple of years, but whatever. It's particularly low right now. And I'm going to attempt this withdrawal type of play, and we'll
we'll get going. So this got unlimbered last turn, I guess. Ended up getting some. I can't keep track of the difference between these. I throw them in the wrong thing. I had a bunch of artillery in here, and anyway, they look the same to me. They both have a burst, and they're the same color schemes on both sides. It's a minor design issue. It's not like the problems that happen over at Compass. Certainly not as damaging for me as the imagery on the counters itself, which I just cannot discern, and the little F's and whatnot. I don't know. My brain's just not absorbing these easily. But we had extraordinarily effective fire here. This one got an effective right away. Here I used 2 artillery to manage to get it because it stacks. And with the front collapsing for the Allied forces, there's a lot less targets, which is why this is limbering up. It's hoping to be able to go find something to bombard. One thing I'm doing, I made the decision to just now, is with general withdrawal declared, I'm giving some bonus to things like dress ranks, to being able to change movement to, I'm only giving a 1 point, change movement to switch into something that supports that general withdrawal, for whatever that's worth. It didn't help these Spaniards here. But that's okay, the French, aren't getting this reserve unit up to the support that they wanted to do either. I rolled for something that didn't make any sense, which was pulling him back. Been away for a little while, and that shouldn't be the case. I should be switching wings, and I have no particular desire to. These guys are in the front, they're where I want them. This guy's in support, he's fine there, so I just guess I passed there. Got a big move here. I did a move from the reserve to this reserve with the cav. I know I can do at least 2 areas with cav. I don't know if I can do more than that, but from the center out to the far right flank is allowable. And I finished up, nothing really changed. I made attempts to do interesting stuff like, what was it? Shifting infantry from either of these wings up into the support wing, or the support line of the planes. They weren't able to succeed with the first roll. They would make it partway to the reserves. If there's room for them there, that's fine. But then they're allowed to do two rolls, a transfer and a commit at the same time. Again, not looking it up. I think I remember what's going on. I'm late enough in the game that when I'm like playing raid, I should be like sorting these guys and getting them prepared for Blenheim. I don't have rules for anything else memorized or read. I was thinking, hey, maybe I'll do an 18XX or something, because I feel like I'm neglecting certain games. I might squeeze in like a light small Euro or something while I'm doing that, but yeah, there's, I'm not going to catch up on an 18XX. I'm not going to catch up on Tanto Monta or anything like that while I'm like, in between these. I didn't bother to prepare. This kind of, it was flirting with it, looking like it was going to break for a while, but it kind of it feels like it ended fast, right? Sure, if I just played it out until a rout, it might take several more turns, but it feels like I'm in the end game really fast. It became very clear that I can't hold the position as the Allies. One thing I wanted to say, and I got wandering into other stuff there, was I not giving any kind of bonus, any kind of concomitant or similar bonus to the French, first of all, but to the Allies for commitment.
You might catch me doing that if I have like a cav brigade or something like that I want to cover the retreat, but I had nothing like that. And the only thing I might have wanted to do is some transfers, but I actually think I just passed across the line for all of those. And now we're on the brigades. Let's take a quick check. There are no Allied charge units, but there are a fairly small number of French ones in play. Kind of assuming that the French are aware, and this is something that might be questionable, but they're aware of the signal to withdraw. They're aware of the fact that the Allies have declared a withdrawal in terms of making their decisions. I could play that either way. If I played it that they weren't aware of it, I would just keep going until. But the thing is that they're going to take die roll benefits and whatnot. I feel like it's the appropriate thing. So this is the weirdness. Well, first of all, open things up. Cadreau here tried to move into address ranks. Even if I stay in the firefights, I have a unit that I'd like to recover damage from. And it's easy, you know, if he manages to break away, I've got an easier movement, don't I? From dress ranks to march. I don't know. If he breaks away and I'm in charge, I can just slam forward. So, and keep pressing him. So maybe I wouldn't do that, but I did. And I failed. But here with Surbeck. Surbeck's in a very interesting position. So I'm in charge right now, and I'm thinking I want to keep it that way. Because I've got attacks here. All these units are connected. Here, they're not connected. But there are two of them there. And if I read this, if no units of a brigade are adjacent when the brigade is activated, it changes to dress ranks and starts to slowly put itself back together. Fine. That doesn't apply. There are units that are adjacent. Now, here's the problem. I don't know if these two are adjacent to one another. Because in the next, if some units are not adjacent when the brigade is activated, these isolated units must move to become adjacent during the reactivation and are treated as if they're under march. The real question I have is, are these thrown into march, or are they considered adjacent to one another, regardless of the fact that they're not adjacent to the main body of the forces? With these bigger brigades, it's quite possible to have like what amounts to two different commands together. And I don't really see what the difference is between me occupying two hexes and me being stacked together. Like these same two units could be here and here, presumably. Because of the angle, I would not be violating the unit ahead of me. Of course, I couldn't be on that wing. Another question is, what's the timing of this? I think if I chose that, if this was just one unit, it would clearly have to move into here. It would achieve march orders. It wouldn't necessarily have to do anything specific about it because some other unit could conceivably fill in the gap or something. None of that feels right? Like, to me, it feels like if there's a unit behind that's filling the gap, I should be able to continue my charge, I know that I've got support coming and whatnot. I don't know how to handle that. But I got to make a decision of whether or not these two, first of all, whether or not those rules are worded exactly as they read. Like, if the intention is exactly what I read, which is, if I was in these two hexes, I would not leave my charge orders, and I would be allowed to attack here. Or, no, I would actually be forced to attack there. And then, is this stacked the same? I think stacked is the same, and I think I'm going to be forced to attack. So I think I've got attacks coming here, 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 at one of these two. I'll go for the weak one, and here. And I'm just peachy with all that. The net effect of that was this guy got himself in a firefight, but this guy managed to actually cross the barricade, still at like +2 because of line support and stuff like that.
and drive this one back. Casualties there. This guy died, and this guy got a retreat. Which, you know, leaving the unit that was protecting this flank behind. Couldn't retreat if it was a full line there. And what that means is now Surbeck has to make a check at a 7, and I have no leader with me. I'm not stacking leaders with units. I got way too much casualties there. And that is a 7, which means I succeed in saving. Now with the, this battery's running down too. With the guards, this is a weird situation. I'm in a firefight here. Got a unit stuck behind the lines here. Got a couple of units back here. Okay, this is all connected. This had better be an Albergoni. But then I got a couple units up here. Problem is everything's kind of worn out. Now I could turn flank and shoot these guys. And I would still be shooting the front unit if I understand, well, there is only a front unit. If I understand correctly, even if there might be a second unit underneath it that's protecting this flank, which again feels weird to me. Okay, there's like stuff that feels like it's maybe was done for simplicity, but just doesn't ring true. And there's something kind of nice about that because I'll be protecting this guy who is in charge, and this guy's next to him, so he could attack. Which again, that doesn't meet what my expectations are there, right? So this guy who's showing his flank to the Allied unit, the view that I have of why a unit in march formation, and I think Nassau's in march, it is, can attack a unit in charge that it starts adjacent to, is the unit in charge is moving forward and is connecting with you. And you're basically engaging in a defensive maneuver, right? But that doesn't make sense if somebody's like doing a parade march. First of all, why are they doing this? But if somebody's doing a parade march in front of you or an about face and marching away from you, you have no momentum to hit them. It's the momentum of the charging unit that is causing the fight to actually occur. But whatever. To some extent, again, simplification, whatever. I think what I want to do is I want to dress ranks because I have casualties here, here, and here. I don't particularly want to loosen this up, but dressing ranks will allow me to rotate and start heading this way and stuff like that. So I think overall it is the best of my options. And I got battery issues. Now here's the weird thing. The brigade integrity, I don't think applies at all here, so that I can recover this unit rather than move up to join the rest of my brigade here. That's not how I first took it. I first took it that like I would have to do things to try to make the brigade link together into a singular unit. That's not how that's worded at all. So somebody told me what they think 4.25 was labeled as. Probably something that Mike Welliker revealed in some thread or something. That's the missing rule. It's a different kind of non-compliance, and I think it did actually fit one of the situations that I had. But again, that's not published, so there's no help for me there. Knowing that the living rules will eventually include the thing that the original rules were supposed to include.
Well, maybe a helpful piece of information was kind of assumed, right? Which is basically what the comment back to me was in my video, was like, well, the living rules include this. I'm like, oh, cool, they're out. So I go run off to look for them. No, they're not out yet. And, I'm fine with them trying to nail it down and get them right. I just wish that, like, there had been some place to point to, hey, this is kind of what we're trying, some kind of discussion that gave me a little bit more information. But I think I kind of got it right. But here I'm not so sure. And again, my gut tells me, hey, this damn unit should be forced to get together. But I don't think I have to, and I don't think I particularly want to in this particular case. I think I want to recover my strength points. Now, I'm relatively fatigued after having done the last of the charges, so I'm putting the dice up there to remind me. But Reynaud had a kind of complicated attack into the village. He drove a unit back. There was an exchange of some points. Nothing got destroyed. And in general, pretty much a wash, except that we gained some ground. Notably, I could not attack this cav because the stream here, but I can move up to it as if I was attacking it, for whatever that matters. Right. I need to snooze a little bit more before I make any decisions of whether or not to go shopping, which I really need to do. But I'm not quite up for that, for trying to sleep again. I had like an hour or so of sleep, but this is the problem. And I'll probably end up sleeping until 4 or 5, and I'll just say, well, I'm fucked. But there's some danger of rain in the morning here, so it's like almost 10 right now. And, yeah, I don't know how to cope with things. But anyway, outside of that, the reason I said that was as an introduction to, I'm back up here fiddling some pieces around. And, like the Allies trying to get the Spaniards out of the way, can't do it. Brigade here, he's still in this stupid position. And that's one thing I could have fixed, with the guards blocking him, guards and Surbeck. Now, if Surbeck had advanced here, Brigade would have had room. I don't feel like there's anything I can do with Brigade until an opening appears where he belongs, which is between those two brigades. And that could be problematic, because if the guards are in charge, well, those are cav, so there's restrictions on what they can do to them. I think they can chase them back. But the other thing, the one thing I did with them was Dalu's cav is marching here, and this is why I picked up the camera, is the brigade transfer is not complete. I haven't reached that reserve line I'm supposed to reach yet. By the way, this is a walled city. Walls, I don't think, are at all discussed here. Maybe they're the full breastworks or something, but I find that highly unlikely. It's probably a walled town, which you just can't walk through except by traveling through the roads on the gates. But it's just not covered. So, you bring a fair amount of knowledge from other games or just common sense into play, playing this. The game is not, complete the way many games tend to be these days. All right, onward. We'll do a few more of these before I crash. Another thing that's not covered in the rules, at least not in a way that makes me happy. Like, maybe you're assumed to be able to figure this out as well. So, unfortunately, these guys are in dress ranks. And I'm just ignoring that because, hey, I saw face up, I want to move these. The actuality is, I got the Nassau infantry here that I can do which would be the case that I want to do. But I'm going to take a look at the one I was going to look at here. This Earl unit here. If I want to move this, this is the thing, you don't actually move as stacks, which may be the secret to this, but it's not explicit in the rules. So what I would sort of automatically do is 2, about face, and move out. Actually, what I think I have to do is move the bottom unit first, 2, move him out. Then this one would turn and move out. And it would actually be the back or bottom unit. The problem with all that is, when attacks are done, they're still done against the top unit. Like, there's no concept of, and we've hit this before, where we were looking at the flanking unit not being the one taking the hit and everything. I almost feel like the in-village rules should be extended to every hex. It's going to make things more complicated, there's no question. But yeah, so like, it's not absolutely, so actual movement, let's see how this is actually done. Movement occurs, so there's not a lot of rules about movement, okay? This is the entire section on movement. Compare this to, like, you know, musket and pike, or more importantly, let's go back to the older days, you know, the old SPI or Avalon Hill rules, where they would tell you what you have to do to move, you know, is tracing a contiguous line and this, that, and the other. None of that is here. It's sort of just, hey, you know how to do war games, right? These are almost like notes that got transferred into a rule book, rather than a clear and precise rule book for new players. I'm okay with that in general. But the concept of stacking then becomes kind of weird here. And we don't have, we have here the role of the bottom unit is to cover the flank and the unit in front if either flank is not occupied. But we don't have the full consequences of that. What we have is the retreat and route units that are in play. What we don't have is what effects that stacking has on movement and what effects it has on potential combat. And I you know, if I'm going to make up the idea that either way, the idea that I can move, that's tobacco stain. One advantage of glossy maps, they clean easier. If I'm going to take sort of the standard kind of movement from most war games into consideration, I would be moving the stack as a whole, right? Without changing the ordering of the stack. I don't believe that's appropriate here. But if it's something else, that needs to be in the rules, and it's not. Likewise, if I'm attacking, let's see how we got this here. Okay, the units that would be vulnerable to multiple attacks, no. The assumption is, and again, it's not spelled out, and maybe it's in the playbook. Maybe there's additional rules in the playbook that are hidden in the example of play. But the assumption in most war games, just like with movement, you know, hex to hex and all that, without skipping hexes and pay the movement point costs and all that kind of stuff. This boilerplate that I usually skip through. And that's how these rules are so sparse, is they leave all that stuff out. I was very, very happy because I thought I knew what it all meant, but I don't. So if I were using the assumption for attacks, I would be doing what I kind of explained, which is, hey, you attack the top unit, right? Yeah, but maybe not. That doesn't really make sense. If I'm hitting you from the flank and you have a unit that refused the flank, I shouldn't be getting a flank attack. But that flank may not be anchored either. Like, what I should see inside that hex, let's take an example over here. So let's say these two units, right, are stacked like this, and there's an enemy attacking them from here. Well, my flank is not open because there's something kind of like this going on. Okay. Let's say there's something, and let's say this flank is anchored. Because I don't know what the fuck happens if I've got, so this is the really screwed up thing. If I've got both flanks open, I'm not sure where this unit is. It's in one of these two positions, but it's not in both. So one of my flanks will be covered. But if I'm attacking this way, what you would think I would get, this will be the top unit because the top unit's the one that's facing properly, right? What you'd think I would get is a hit on this unit, frontal, with what is probably an open flank, but not guaranteed, okay? For all the modifiers effects, it's the same. There's a -1, there's a -1 to the strength of a unit who's being attacked in the flank. There's a -1 for having an open flank, regardless of which side you're being hit from. But, and I'm assuming this flank is filled, okay. But it is important because these two units are distinct things, and I should be hitting the one that is refusing the flank if I'm coming from the flank, even if the modifiers all come the same. That's one side of the, let's try to make this reasonable, right? Let's try to think about what, and I say, for simplicity's sake, Jesus, fucking, oh, I think that was the recycling truck. I didn't think this was a recycling week. I can't keep track of it. They used to give me a calendar. They'd send it every year. Well, they sent it for a couple of years. And it was really helpful because it would tell me which week the recycling came. And saving money or whatever, they don't do that. Now, I never have a fucking clue. Okay. Yeah, I knew it was recycling. I was going to bring my bottles down, but I chose not to. Anyway, getting back to what we're talking about, like, I understand that concept of simplicity, but it's also just wrong, right? And here's the thing. The rules are agnostic about it. Like, I make the assumption that the way you resolve it, what is essentially this situation, is you hit the top unit with the same modifiers that you would hit the bottom unit that I just described. And, you know, it works out about the same, more or less. That is something that I think I'm going to change when I play the Blenheim. I think I'm going to try to play it as it should be played, as far as I am concerned, without concerns for simplicity, but instead worrying about, look, which unit am I actually hitting? Does it have first fire? That could be a significant piece of importance. If I'm hitting a unit on the end with a refused flank behind it, both hits shouldn't be going on that first unit because the casualty rate's going to build up too high on that. All kind of stuff like that the game doesn't take advantage. The game rules don't specify are happening, so I assume they're not supposed to happen because they're all weird things that, like, you know, games don't usually do that kind of stuff. But on the other hand, it doesn't specify the opposite either. And you're left with this, I wonder if they meant for this to be realistic and believable or simple. I wonder which one they meant. I think they meant simple, but again, it's agnostic about it. You know, the movement rules don't give you enough information to know how stacking interacts with movement. The combat rules don't give you enough to know how combat interacts with stacking. Very problematic. And who the fuck's turn is it? It was the Allied turn because I was looking to try to figure out which unit I wanted to move, and I guess it's going to probably be down here because I'm trying to get, I'm just kind of going across the board, but I'm trying to get out of the area, and I can't do these guys because they're in dress ranks. But I want to get back to my rant. So, the best of both worlds for me would be about a paragraph that kind of said something. This would be a very Berg-like thing to say, right? In the stacking area, stacking's effect on movement and combat would be something along the line. And by the way, villages are just as fuzzy, although they go into a little bit more detail there. It's not clear which way the units are facing, right? So, yeah, we got to give another example. But if I've got 2 units in the village, the top unit is facing the way it's pointing. The other units in it, if there's 2 other units, okay, they're facing out the other 2 non-adjacent vertices. But if there's only one, it's facing one of those 2, but it's not clear which one. Right? The one it needs to be. Okay, but maybe it needs to be facing both on a particular turn. And that would be one factor. But what I was trying to say is to maintain the sparsity of the rules, and nobody wants this but me, I guess. I don't know. I know that I like it this way. What I would say is a paragraph or 2 under stacking that said something like, for all considerations of movement and combat effects for stacking, consider how the units would have to be aligned that are stacked in the same space and apply the results appropriately. And maybe a little example in the rules. The examples are pretty limited, but again, they may rely too much on the playbook. I'm not gonna read an extended example of play in general, but I feel like it might help here. It might have given me some idea of these ambiguities. However, I just assumed that two things, that the top unit is the one that takes the combat and that the stack would move as a whole. Neither of which I think are necessarily true. Again, the rules are agnostic on it. I think a little bit more, but not much more, would be my ideal. Something that gave me the clue as to which of those 2 to pick, right? Is it for simplicity's sake that, you know, you treat the stack as a single unit or something? It would also apply to that Surbeck situation where I had 2 units stacked together. Well, is that stack 2 units that are adjacent, or is it just 1 unit, right? I don't know. Right. Zoom in again for no great reason. I did the Nassau unit, and they basically about-faced and started marching away. I could have done address ranks. This gets me out quicker. I'm going to try to use the Athlone Cav to support them, and that may actually be a rush to hit them. I may allow some fudging of the system because of the withdrawal situation. This allows me to about face and get out of there. I had to pay an extra movement point to get out of that. Oh, was it 2? Oh no, those just can't move. May not move. Oh, fuck. So this guy would have been, he is just stuck here. I'm also going to allow Brigade cohesion to fall apart. For the simple fact of, yeah, he's, you know, he's stuck in place, man. And I think he was facing that way. While the rest of the brigade is trying to withdraw, I don't think that they would necessarily have to wait for him. So now, to take into account how to cover for this, I'm going to allow Athlon to try to get into charge orders to break up this pursuit and open up a path, open up some safety for NASA to get out of there. How am I doing that? Well, I'm not going to give them any kind of bonus to change orders or anything for this. So they would be going from march to charge at 4. There's no other modifiers there. And if they get it, I'm going to allow them a free swap with Nassau and get Nassau behind the lines. This is where it's in the handling of this that I feel that the withdrawal requires more specialization. But we don't get that. I'm not going to allow him to necessarily swap in, although we have a violation if I'm in that position, which I don't think should happen. So I think we'll do this, pull Nassau back. If I'm not in charge, I can still probably cover, which will be something like this that I'll be doing. I'll continue with the rest. The kind of stuff I'm doing at this point, I'm just winging it, right? Like I'm making shit up on the fly. Kind of like I did with the, fuck, what was that game? The Japanese one that I kind of liked. It's not Sekigahara. It's, A Most Dangerous Time, I think. I'm gonna do trying to remember what it's called. Warriors of Japan or whatever at some point. It's gonna be interesting because I don't know, you know, the Japanese families the way I know the English and French nobility that's covered in Warriors of God. Didn't get the charge I wanted with the Spanish cavalry, but I am going to move them up here because essentially they're trying to cover the withdrawal of Van Hayden and the Hanoverians, and they need to be able to operate in the front regardless of what orders they have on here. Again, I'm going to be very, very flexible about how I use the translations. Right, to another point of grumpiness. This is a huge wing. Sure, it's bigger than everything except the planes, but it's not big enough. It has more frontage than the planes does. From the beginning of the game, the frontage runs from here all the way really over to here. That's humongous. It's like almost twice the size of planes. It can only have 3 brigades in the front. I'm going to continue with that, but that's why there's gaps here, especially on the French side, right? Obviously, I could let the, not press the English here, but I wanted the cav that I had forced to be up front. I don't know if it was forced to. It might have been. It might have been. I could look in the playbook and see. I think it actually was. because, yeah, it's just nasty the way it is.
I think we're at the French have a whole bunch of units that need to all go at once. This Hanoverian cav here, I could conceivably have charged with it, I guess. I don't feel like that necessarily does me any good. I've got this cav kind of busy. So, first of all, I don't really want to do it because I just don't want to attack the French across the river and whatnot. But I'm going to leave them just in normal movement mode, and I may pull them back a little bit. But their main job is to screen, again, to help these guys get out of there. And right now those guys aren't going anywhere. Nothing exciting for the French to do over here. Just assume that all of their march units are flipped. I'm going to flip El Brigade because he's in the front. We shouldn't leave him that way. But these others, I have nothing I really want to do with them. These guys, again, haven't made it completely over. They're barely crossing the line. So I want to keep the brigade transfer on them. And that means we go to the first of the Allied dress ranks. And I think we'll try to finish this video up and probably end up not getting food today. Show you kind of what's happening. So Dalencourt was in dress ranks. Yeah, Nassau pulled back a hex for the most part, behind the river, behind the fortifications, giving up this part of the town. It's risking the Spaniards, but you know, they attempted to get into dress ranks and get away. I don't feel like I feel like I had the option to try to stay and hold a solid defensive line, but you know what? I'm also willing to abandon a brigade in order to pull bigger forces out of play. And they're only Spaniards. I'm looking at that from the Dutch point of view, which is they probably don't mind that much risking some other nationality's force. But then on the French side, Dalencourt was back here under dress ranks. He rolled, now I could have rolled for a charge, but I don't want to attack across here, especially with a weak unit like this. So I rolled and got into march, and I'm moving up into contact just to give me, it doesn't give me any attacks or anything, but it gets me closer for any kind of pursuit that I might perform. Honestly, what I really wanted to do was swap these units. I don't think I rolled for it this time. And I'm not making up any special rules for a pursuit, you know, kind of bonus to allow them to swap in or something. I don't know of anything that would apply that would make that more reasonable, right? I think pursuits were rather lackadaisical in this period for the most part, especially by infantry. Earl here wanted to go from dress ranks to march. I didn't get the successful roll, so I'm kind of stuck where I am no matter what. Even if I had gotten march, I would have held this line because this gives me a defensive anchor for the regular Nassau units to move back, and then this all to move at once. Let Opton kind of cover, let the two cav units basically cover the withdrawal of all the infantry. Again, that feels right. More situations where I feel like the game's rules don't cover things right. Okay. Rochignon got into a charge. I attacked, successfully pushing these Dutch over. But I'm also making attacks here. I'm not sure. Probably hit this unit, try to force it to retreat. Because that'll cause more problems. But this unit's of interest. So there's a force marching this way and a force here. And I've got a flank, a unit that would be a flanking unit anyway. But my flanks are actually anchored by both of these spaces. This is weird because these guys are not anchoring my flank at all. They're marching away from me, right? But following the rules strictly, they would count as a flank anchor. I don't think they should. I do think the unit behind me, underneath, would count as a refused flank to give me any advantage there.
and the congestion may be enough to justify that, say that they're behind me enough that I can't withdraw or something like that. I don't know. There's something really weird about the way the lines kind of work in this. So I'll just go with the rules as written, essentially, and use some hand waving there. And the net effect of that was this guy retreated. Now this was a refused flank, so I could get through there. Was it really? Yeah, because the other unit was here, not here. And then this unit got a firefight locking Earl back into place. That's going to just cause problems. Earl luckily is in dress ranks. They can try to fall back, but yeah, it's going to be an ugly withdrawal that goes over several turns. Hanover backs out of Neerwinden, hoping for the best. Here's an interesting situation. I wanted Salis to be like this. This unit was here. They're in dress ranks. They were unable to get into charge, which is what they wanted. This unit, under dress ranks, actually, I think we were like this kind of situation. I wanted to move here. This unit is kind of in a questionable place, to tell you the truth. But because we were a contiguous brigade, I don't think we get thrown into march orders here. So what I feel like has to happen is I have to rotate these two. Yeah. And here's the thing, how do you rotate the two one at a time? Because it wouldn't be a legitimate stacking at that case. So like movement has to be as a stack, for that at least, if not for everything. So like a little bit of common sense in terms of how the game plays says, you can't do what I was talking about where you about face with the rear unit, move it forward, about face with the forward unit, move it forward, and then behind, i.e. underneath what was the rear unit, but it's actually the rear if it gets hit from the rear, and all kind of stuff like that. That's the kind of thing that I have to cope with. Well, with this, I would have to individually move one of these units the 1 hex side, and then individually move the other one the 1 hex side. That's fine. I mean, that's not that big a stretch, but given that the rules are agnostic about the stacking impacts on movement, I would say that issues are raised if you don't go with the kind of assumption that I had been going from other war games. Not covered in the rules, but again. Yeah, this is going to be a long one, it seems. Okay. And now the Van Hayden, under dress ranks, didn't have to try to change or anything, pulls back. That's abandoning Ramsey and the artillery strike. And opening up a possibility for the French to come forward and hit them again. That's fine. That feels and sounds just right to me. The Thiange unit has marched forward. These two are hitting parts of Van Hayden. This one has crossed. It has to, as far as I can tell, because it's under charge, and it would be behind one of these units, so it automatically crosses the wing boundary, which might cause some issues, and it hit this cav, just forcing it back, which is fine. I didn't want to hit this because they're just dragoons. Dragoons are weaker, so I'd rather, I don't know. I don't know why, because these things are able to like maybe get momentum. They're not. They need to have 2 hex, so it's not going to make a difference. And let's take the attacks that happen. One of them coming from my artillery hit. And so Thiange ends up driving this unit back, pinning this unit. We got one more unit left if I have everything counted, which is the Reeb unit. It is in dress ranks.
I think I want to try to get it into charge. I don't mind having this pinned. And the formations start to get a little ragged as Rebe is smashing through here, but got repulsed here. Van Hayden, no way I can keep it together. So I went all in one direction into a column. Is that a problem? Nah. There's a problem here that's beginning to develop. But that's been created by combat. I'll fix it. I think that's all the units. Nothing routed this turn, so pretty much the route markers come off, and I do a little bit of cleanup. And so there we hit 11 a.m. The pursuit is working here. Pushing through here. I guess it's going to kind of develop there. It's kind of working on this side of the map over here. The Allies aren't really withdrawing as effectively. It's fine. Reminder, we're in area that would never happen in a real game here, right? So, in a real game, the Allied army would have declared, we withdraw, and the game would be over. They lose. In actual competitive play, what the hell's going on up there? Northeast Electric, or Northwest Electric. Probably just for homes. In more competitive play, there's a good chance that the Allied player would not do what was historically, viable, making this decision to withdraw that William actually made, and instead would fight to the last bloody man. If that were to happen, this game would continue playing, but we wouldn't be seeing me make, these special rules to try to encourage withdrawal and whatnot. Looking at the special situation of the withdrawal has helped me find more problems with the rules, problems that, ambiguities and whatnot, especially regarding stacking, that aren't just applicable due to the withdrawals. I think I've tried to express them before, but I didn't really have as much of a grasp. But seeing the withdrawal in action made it much, much easier to get an idea. I really do like doing withdrawals from combat. I think they help show how much the system makes you pay for losing a battle, right? Even if it's sort of a voluntary simple loss. Now, a full rout, I consider a much, much worse situation than this voluntary withdrawal and the cost that you pay for that, even if the costs may seem higher. But honestly, I think that the Allied position was untenable by the time, by the beginning of this turn, which is why we made that decision there. All right, we're going to send this up, and we'll move into more kind of extended play, like this turn kind of was. The game could have just ended here. You can give up on the video here. If you haven't given up already, you can give up wherever you want, really. But I'm interested in seeing, how my little fudgings, etc., develop, and what I'm able to come up with out of it, and whether it gives me any other insight into the system that, is interesting to me. All right, up it goes.